seems was never fair. I'd rather be this starving artist, experience life now at its farthest. One blue sky, we are under, torn and shred now, ripped asunder. The politics, war and famine. I thank God I'm still here jamming. Train your mind. You know, I'm starting to think that goodness itself, or our concept of good and evil, is kind of like the wind. Just because the wind isn't blowing in the direction that you'd like it to, doesn't necessarily mean that the wind itself is bad. It just blows. It really has no care or regard for which is the most beneficial direction. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of like our perspective of what truly is good, is it not? Because what we base good as is from the perspective in which we are looking at the circumstance itself, giving us our sense of goodness in relation to where it is that we stand in regards to the issue at hand. I mean, you could always look at it in a deeper level, right? And you could say, well, good and evil are in a constant struggle, and the wind is influenced by cosmic events on a global scale of the evaporation and the dissipation of water and of the atmospheric conditions, and it's in a constant balance and fluctuation of the natural world itself. And so the wind is actually in direct relation to a cause and effect relationship, just like good and evil is. And so there is an actual cause at hand, which is causing the wind to blow in the direction that it is, giving us the direction that the wind is currently blowing, showing us that there is an actual reason for the wind blowing in the direction that we observe it blowing in. So, is there truly then a balancing force between good and evil interactions itself, where it's this constant, almost like a chemical equilibrium, where as the reaction proceeds forward, it's actually causing an equilibrium reaction to occur, where eventually it reaches an equilibrium and the reaction itself stops. Thinking of these things always reminds me of certain scriptural passages, like in Romans. This is probably one of my favorite scriptures. And if you're somebody that, is like, oh, you're going to start Bible bashing and stuff like that, well, you know what? I could quote Dr. Seuss and come to the same, moral ideologies which are represented within biblical passages. I mean, look at it in those terms rather than, your obscured vision where you're trying to look through a peephole at something, and so you're going to condemn everybody who speaks citing these sources, when in reality, when you look at the deeper actual event that's going on here, a lot of these things and ideologies are truths. And for example, I mean, whether you're of a scientific mind, you're going to come to some realizations at some point in time in your life in terms of what God really is. And even if you're atheistic in your views, you still have to come to a realization, if you're somewhat scientific, that there is an ever omnipresent flow of energy in the universe itself and of information. And you yourself are merely just a piece of this information that's flowing to and fro. And collectively, things have an intelligence above your own. And so collectively, would not this intelligence be an intelligence greater than yourself, which in all actuality represents, in most cases, the definition of God itself? Okay, so there you have it. Well, anyways, getting back to what we were talking about, one of my favorite scriptural passages is in Romans. And it speaks about how should we go about sinning because we know that the grace of God is pretty much always there. And I like to apply the scripture in many different forms. And I like to relate it to ignorance. Just because, we are infinitesimally stupid in relation to the magnificence of the universe and of God itself, does that not mean that we ourselves should try in our utmost to actually understand the nature of reality and of universal law and the interactions going on in reality itself? Or should we just rely upon the magnificence of God and of the universe to itself balance out our ignorance through the ever-intelligent and all-knowing universe, which in and of itself is representative of the omnipotence of God and the all-knowing nature of God? So should we dwindle in our existence in ignorance and accept the fact that we cannot understand truly what God is, or how God actually plays a role in our life, or how the universe itself interacts with things that are within the universe, or how we ourselves, as things within the universe, can actually alter the universe itself? Should we just, accept the fact that it's futile, and in our futility we gain bliss because we know that there really is no consequences for what it is that actually goes on, because we're just a speck of paint, which, the speck has significance in that if the speck was missing, you'd notice that it wasn't, but in the grand scheme of the picture itself, the speck that you are really doesn't play that big of a role. And so should we dwindle in our ignorance? Just like dwindling in sin or in evil ways? Or in accepting our ignorance doesn't make us more ignorant? In saying I'm stupid so I'm going to stop trying to be intelligent, am I going to in fact make myself more stupid than if I actually say, nay, even though the grace of God exists, I'm going to try my hardest and my best to be God-like and to be like deity and to understand the nature of the universe and of reality, and I'm going to try to be the most morally uplifting character that I can be. And I'm going to try and be somebody who exemplifies the archetypes of moral and ethical character. So I'm going to be, courteous, kind, loving, caring. I'm going to promote healthy values. I'm going to be somebody which is a filter for reality, in that even if I come across negative things, I'm not going to myself become a microphone for what it was that I interacted with. I'm going to filter out what it was that I came across and instead transmute what it was, which was negative and which was unholy, into the holy itself. And in that, we no longer accept the fact that we ourselves are fallen creatures, which ultimately succumb to the evil ways of the natural world. And this is another scripture which is kind of intriguing, where, God says, or, holy individuals who say that they received revelation from God say that the natural world itself is an enemy to God and of God. Well, why would this be? Because if you go out and look in the natural world, it's all sex and violence and killing and stealing and deception and all of these things, so that things can take advantage of each other. And the reason why humans themselves are in a lot of ways separate and above the natural world is because we try our hardest to actually go against carnal and selfish desire and of things in a destructive manner, like in a lot of ways the natural world itself participates within. We try to actually, go against the grain. Like, for example, in our treatment of handicapped or of actually deprived individuals, in the natural world, literally in a lot of cases, they just leave these individuals to die because that's just the natural way of things, survival of the fittest. If it can't necessarily proliferate, or if it can't necessarily take advantage of resources, then the natural world is just going to kill it off. It's not like Mother Earth comes and swaddles the baby, which has deformality. No, it just lets it suffer and die. And so, should we just accept that, yes, we're carnal creatures, and, everybody has sex, we participate in violence, we go about, speaking all manner of unholy things, we use deception, and if you look at it enough, you're going to see that human nature follows more of the natural world than you actually thought, and we are more animalistic in our actions than you might have originally thought. But in knowledge of the scripture, we go against that and we say, we're aware of that and we're going to try our best, even though that we know we are far from deity, we're going to be the most godlike that we can be. Even though the grace of God is always there to, in effect, fix our mistakes, it still doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to be the best that we can. In a lot of ways, I always relate this to ignorance and knowledge, because ultimately we're stupid, and the more we know, the more aware we are of what we don't know, meaning that the more you know, the less you actually know, which is kind of a contradiction. It's like the bubble grows as it actually, you zoom into it, like, sort of thing. It's like you increase one area, but it's like this thing which grows the opposite as you grow what it was, which would actually distinguish what is actually growing. I had somebody once explain this to me in the most fascinating way, but I can't necessarily eloquently speak it the way that they did, where it's like there's like a bubble growing inside of a bubble, and it's like we increase the area of one and the volume of one, but as we do so, then the volume of the other kind of grows, or as one is shrinking, the other grows. It's like as the area of our ignorance actually is supposedly supposed to shrink due to our knowledge, it actually doesn't shrink. It actually grows with the bubble of knowledge. I'm not necessarily explaining that, how I'm visualizing it in my mind. So I'm just going to kind of move on, because it's not coming out the way that I'm conceptualizing it at the moment. But anyways, maybe you got the gist of what it was that I'm trying to say anyways. And something else. It's like on one of my previous videos I spoke about how it's smart to be stupid, because if people picture you as stupid, then they don't hold you accountable for anything, and they kind of just don't necessarily require you to actually be a helpful part of society. And as they don't require this of you, then you're able to take advantage of society itself. However, in a lot of ways, kind of taking that approach can backfire, because then society will hold you captive, because you won't be given necessarily the perks, so to speak. It's like you can be held captive for your act of stupidity, where then people actually take what is an act to be serious, and then your stupidity is actually taken seriously, and then you're actually inhibited by society from doing things which you would otherwise be allowed to do if they thought you were an actual capable individual. And so it actually can backfire. And now I'm kind of like picturing a little bit. Let's say that there's a bubble, and this bubble is what we don't know. It shrinks with the amount of knowledge that grows, and the amount of knowledge that we don't know like grows as well, and it eclipses itself, like inside of itself. It's not making any sense at all. And rather than just sitting here and trying to think about it on video, it would make a really fun video of me just like sitting here. And I would really find it intriguing if anybody actually sat through the video until I realized the way that I could actually communicate my thought. Because who knows how long I'd be sitting here for, actually trying to visualize this thought and then conceptualize it into language which I could speak so that somebody else could understand it in terms relevant to the conversation itself. Pretty tired. I spent the first portion of my day installing a basketball hoop for commission. Anyways, I think that I figured out how to explain what it was that I was talking about earlier. And I think that I was on the right track when I was speaking about how, let's say you're off in space and you're looking at the Earth from far away. All of a sudden, as you start zooming in on the Earth, and the Earth is representative of a certain topic or of knowledge itself. And as we start zooming in on it, it starts growing, okay? And so as we start diving into a certain topic or an area of knowledge, the total area of knowledge itself, within regards to what it was that we're zooming in on, actually expands and increases. And so what once looked like something that we could possibly comprehend is now something which is overwhelming. And the more we actually zoom in on it, the more that it grows. And by zooming in, we actually see less of the whole picture. Because it's like you can no longer see the Earth as this entire object, because you're now zoomed in so far that you can only see a small portion of it. And in a lot of ways, that's like our quest for knowledge. As soon as we dive in to knowledge, then the amount of what it is possible to know actually expands and becomes larger than what it is that we can actually see. And so, in a lot of ways, we're incapable of actually perceiving the whole picture, but in seeing the entire picture, we can't see what the picture is made up of itself. And so it's this contradiction where as we try to zoom in to see how the picture itself is composed, we actually can't see the picture itself. But as we zoom out, we can see the picture, but then we can't necessarily see what it's composed of. And in a lot of ways, that's like our quest to dismantle ignorance into knowledge, but the more we know, the more ignorant we actually are. So if you were able to stick with me as I kind of sat there, didn't really think too much. I'm pretty tired. It's like 3 o'clock and I've been working since, this morning. I live on a farm and my family is in construction, so, it's like wake up and do chores around the house, maintain the yard, maintain the whole facility, make sure all the animals stay alive and that they're in good living conditions, and then, take care of myself, even though it might not look like I do. I try to maintain, proper hygiene, maybe participate in a little hijinks or some fun activity. And then on top of that, I have to make sure that the family business itself is functioning and running fluidly, and we actually make sure to hold up all our ends of every bargain that we strike and of every deal that we take part in, and making sure that things are done in accordance with the vision that somebody else would hold them to, and that the standard is something that, can be competitive with the rest of the community, and abroad as well. So yeah, I'm already pretty beat, but in a lot of ways kind of emptying my mind into these videos actually allows me to go more into like zombie mode and actually go and participate in a lot of these mundane tasks. It's kind of like if you've ever read Harry Potter and Dumbledore, he like pulls out his memories and he like throws them away into like this pool which contains all his thoughts, and he like tells Harry, he's like, sometimes you just gotta like throw it out, And I feel like in a lot of ways that's kind of what I'm doing with these videos, and in doing so it allows me to kind of like extinguish a lot of the fires that I may internalize by externalizing them and putting them someplace else so they don't occupy my being, and it allows me to get things done more effectively. It's almost like therapy. And in a lot of my things, it might seem like I come across pretty negative, but I kind of feel like in a lot of ways it's like more healthy to expose of negative things in a healthy way rather than becoming a toxic individual with built up toxicity within your body and being, and your psychology. So it's like going to the dump and getting rid of certain wastes, it's like we may make and create a lot of toxic things, but if you find the proper way to dispose of them, then it can actually be something which can be recycled in the future or whatever, so that they don't necessarily impact society in a harmful way. I kind of feel like I do that with a lot of my videos where it's like, I'm just like, shit, fuck, piss, cunt, motherfucker, bitch ass, whatever. And I could get even more vulgar. I doubt anybody watches my videos, but it would be kind of ironic if, like, out of all of the people going through YouTube, it's like somebody that knows me finds my channel and they're like, what the fuck is Austin doing on here, just like talking shit, and then all of a sudden their whole image of me now changes towards this like altered view where it's like I'm this really degraded and like morally insignificant person in regards to my viewpoint on society and reality and of everything. When in actuality, it's like when I go around, I am actually a pretty like pleasant person, and do my best to like actually have a positive impact on everything rather than like going around harming and destroying everything. But it's like so hard when it's like a lot of those things are so pervasive in life not to actually become what it is that you're being exposed to. It's like, shit, I'm exposed to like so much perverse nature and perverse reality and a vulgar and profane action on a day-to-day basis that it's like surprising that I'm not as fucked up as I could be, by being exposed to all this shit. And in a lot of ways I can still maintain my composure rather than, just fucking exploding. But I guess that's life. It's like with this whole YouTube endeavor, it's like with my facial hair. It's like every night I go to sleep and it's like I wake up and it's like I need to cut that shit off. It's like just this shit that gets dirty and messy, and it's like it takes forever if I want it to look good to like actually maintain it and to make it be something that's presentable. And like with long hair, it's just like all that shit just needs to be cut off so that I don't have to deal with it. It's like I feel like I'm getting that point with my YouTube channel where it's like it's just fucking pointless, It's like, what the fuck am I even doing on this stupid fucking thing, It's like all this shit is just pointless nonsense. And like really, it's like my beard. It's just like I'm ready to just like shave it off and cut it off. But there's like such this like fine line between like going and like sticking things out and like sticking with it versus just being like fuck it and then just going in the bathroom and then just like shaving off all my facial hair, and then afterwards I'm like, fuck, if I could have just stuck with it for like a year, then I might have like this magnificent like mane, and then I could like cornrow all this down and put this into 2 long braids and then like cornrow my mustache out and then like braid it down and put like golden clasps on the end of it so that I look like a badass. But no, I had to go and fuck it all up because it's like I'm walking on a tightrope in reality, and it's like one little mistake and then all of a sudden it's just like, fuck, I have to start all over again. That's how my YouTube channel is now. It's like there's just so much shit on there, and it's just like I've like said so much shit that I feel like I've already ruined like my image on it. So it's just like, what the fuck is this even, like, am I even doing with this anymore? Like, it's already some piece of shit, like ruined, like scrap it, like scrap it. it's like I'm in my ceramics class and it's like I'm trying to like make this vase and I'm like bringing up the clay and it's just fucked up, but I'm like trying to like sit there and mend it like as I'm like going. And you know, I have had times where I've had shit go like that, and then at the end I just like manufacture it into something else. I like transmute the fact that it was like in this pitiful state and I make it into something that's presentable. And then it's like, well, I'm glad I stuck with it, and I'm glad that I didn't just rage quit and just like smash it all down and then have to start all over and then just fuck up again, you know. And then it's like, but then it's like a continual process, because then it's like I got this bowl and then it's like it's fun to break shit, you know. So even though I have this glazed and finished like ceramic bowl that turned out pretty good, and it's like I just had to keep pushing ever so slightly not to you know, just give up on it, even though it was like pitiful. And I feel like maybe we all think everything that we do is pitiful anyways. Even when it's done, I'm still just like at the point where it's like, it'd be fun to fucking break that shit. You know? Just take that out there and then just go into like, into the street and just fucking smash it and then just like shrug my shoulders and then just walk off and then let somebody else clean it up. And then have somebody who actually was like, oh, why'd you do that, man? That was so cool. Come up to me, and then I'll just be like, fuck it. Like, I had more fun breaking something in 5 seconds that took me like 2 weeks to make, right? It's like shaving all this off. It's like, I'm clean again. Like, you know, wipe me clean. Like, let me start fresh. It's like I'm so dirty that I don't feel like no matter how much I can wash off, that I can ever be clean again, unless I forget everything that it was, which I'm like dirty for. If that made any sense at all. I used to keep written journals every day until I realized I was like, I like thought like in the depths of my mind, I was like, oh, somebody's gonna like come across these in the future and think they're like so badass. And then I like realized I was like, after I've done so much work like cleaning up people's homes, like all that shit just gets trashed. You know, it's like all that shit, because I've been part of it, where it's like we just go through somebody's home and we're renovating it and they've been like they've failed to like their home has been repossessed by the bank or whatever, and then the bank sells it off in an auction, and then somebody buys it, and then they hire us to remodel it. We go in there and you know, clean out the whole place, and there's just piles and piles of this shit. You know, people's lives like in like 5 rooms, and then all we do is just go in there and take everything and then just throw it in a big old dump trailer, and then go to the dump and then just dump it into the bowels of the earth. And it's like it just gets just recycled. All that information and everything just gets recycled back into the universe, you know. It's like it just is nothing. And that, I think that's kind of what made me stop like all my written journals and all that shit. I was just like, huh, this is all kind of pointless. And then I thought for a second, I was like, maybe at like, if I started like YouTube channels, then I could actually like make that like my career, and like I could like start advertising on my channels, and I could like make monetization and like all this dumb shit, you know. And like I see these people where it's like all they do is make a video a day or whatever, and then they, you know, make like 10 grand a month or whatever off of YouTube from, you know, if they get enough viewers and subscribers. And I was like, oh, I could do that. Like, and then who knows, maybe like my words will actually have influence on what's going on. And then it was like, shit, this is like one step above like me writing in like my written journals, but it really isn't like any amount of significant amount better. It's like no significant amount better or like higher. I don't know, maybe if it does pick up, then I'll like actually regurgitate all of that stuff that was within my journals onto my video journals, so that it's like people can actually access it like in a current manner in relation to my lifetime and like digest what it is that I'm talking about, I don't know. Fuck it. Peace out. Look at the title. Coming to terms with reality. What does that mean? It means that as we're conducting an experiment, we actually take the results for what they are rather than what we wanted to occur. And that's bias, folks. So, what is it that I'm experiencing? If I myself am coming to terms with reality, then what do the results suggest? What conclusions can I then actually make? First off, I have to conclude that I am actually not that smart. If I was, why am I not the supreme ruler of all you peons? Literally sitting on the throne, or not on the throne, doing whatever it is that I want. Anytime, anywhere, anything that I wanted. So, based upon the notion and the actual fact that I'm not doing that, I have to come to the conclusion that I'm actually not that intelligent. Otherwise, would I not be able to come up with some way to take advantage of the system itself so that the system had to work for me rather than me being a slave to the system? So that's one conclusion, and that's coming to terms with reality, folks. The other conclusion, I'm actually not that good looking. If I was, why have I never actually had a woman be attracted to me my entire life? The truth isn't necessarily supposed to make you happy. The truth disregards happiness. The truth is just truth. So, given the fact that I've never been pursued by a woman, I have to come to the conclusion that I'm not something that is desirable by the opposite sex. So that is coming to terms with reality. Now, number 3. I'm not that charismatic. If I was, I'd have friends. If I was charismatic, then why is it that I don't actually have any friendly acquaintances? If I was an individual with a charismatic aspect to me, then I would find myself in company of people who enjoyed my company. Now, given the fact that that's not something I experience on a day-to-day basis, and most of the interaction that I actually am a part of is based upon requirement rather than want, means that I myself am not charismatic. And the fact that people want to fulfill requirement doesn't count. And so they have to fulfill the requirement by, interacting with me to a certain degree, means that I'm not charismatic. That's coming to terms with reality. Now, the other term in which we should come to realize in regards to reality itself is that hell itself is a place in which you actually can reside. And hell is a place which exists on earth. Now, before you start actually saying, whoa dude, what are you talking about here? You really have to understand that when people are referring to a lot of these things, they're referring to psychological states of being or states of consciousness. So it's actually a fact that certain people, live in less than desirable states or qualities of their lives. And so by finding yourself within this state psychologically or physically, in regards to some sort of physical addiction, some sort of, other sort of characteristic. This is a description of hell. And through moral and ethical guidelines, we are taught to avoid the pitfalls which can actually lead to us finding ourselves within hell. So, hell is a place that we have to come to terms with reality that actually exists. Because everybody is like on a different level, of self-esteem and of self-worth and of other things, right? And so by making choices and by following the guidelines outlined to us by our elders, we can actually avoid finding ourselves in a location which is similar to the description of hell itself. A place which is inescapable, full of, all manner of wickedness, which we may have performed to actually find ourselves imprisoned inside of this hellhole and of this psychological state. Now, going a little bit deeper into the whole question itself, can we really blame anybody for finding themselves in hell? I mean, ultimately, who is it that placed themselves within these positions? I mean, sure, I'm given choices, am I not? But why is it that I make the choices that I do? Is it not because of some other thing which occurred before me, which brought me into being? And by me being in that moment, I really didn't have a choice as to what it was I was going to do, because the choice was already made before I was. So in this, hell is a place which is reserved for people, in that they were literally already booked a reservation there, even though they said they didn't necessarily have to go and stay there. Right? Anyways, coming to terms with reality, folks. I mean, how do you want to see it?
Train your mind now, hear my words. Twitter pated little birds. If you've kept up with all my posts, then your life's just like a ghost, already dead in the machine. The screen and life one's in between.